We're going to get started. Looks like we've got a lot of people here. We'll have a few people coming more. But just come on in and we'll pick up where they left off. Anyway, I said earlier, I'm Renee Lazear. Welcome. This is the Sunset-Parkside District 4 Town Hall for Upzoning. We are pleased to have this esteemed panelists and guests and all of you and our host to put this together to be here today. Upzoning is a really important issue, obviously, and we're here not to have this be a debate, but it's a community informational meeting to inform people about upzoning and the associated topics around upzoning. We also are doing something new today too. We're doing a hybrid webinar. We're trying out the translation and we hope it works. Everybody figures it out. If they don't, we'll hear from people and we'll have it be better the next time. Before we get started with the presentation, we'd like to do a little bit of housekeeping things. Obviously, you saw the snacks and water. I hope you're enjoying them. There's community literature on the chairs and around and outside. The bathrooms are outside the doors here, ladies' room and the gentleman's room. We ask that you, when you leave, please toss your trash out of the garbage cans provided by the church. They asked us to have you do that. And that's about it. So also at the end of the presentation, and the speaker's talking, we will have a Q&A and then an opportunity to line up along the wall there, please, and come up and ask some questions that's pertinent to upzoning. Please try to be respectful when you ask your questions, concise, to the point, simple questions. We're only giving 1 minute between asking the questions and the person's listening. If it's a really engaging, long question, we're not going to hold hard and fast, but we want to hold to 1 minute as much as we possibly can. Anyway, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel first. We have right here Miss Lori Brooks, Lori Brooke. She is the founder of Neighborhood United SF and Comm Hall Association. To her right, we have Peter Stevens. He's the board member with Telegraph Hill Dwellers. And we have Dennis Richards. He's a former SF Planning Commissioner. Over here to my right, we have Supervisor Peskin and Supervisor Connie. We feel that way too. Our supervisor from District 4, Joel Engardio, unfortunately was not able to be here today as he had a pressing engagement that he couldn't get out of, but he said to tell you that he next time will look forward to it, be happy to attend. So without further ado, let's start the presentation. Lori?
So hopefully everyone out in Zoom land can see this. And if not, you know who you are. Text Greg. Let them know it's not working. So hello everyone. Welcome tonight. My name is Lori Brooke. I am president of Comm Hall Association and I'm also one of the co-founders of Neighborhoods United SF as we're one of the hosts for this evening. To run me one esteemed slide. So there's the list of folks that have been involved in putting this on. You have the Coalition for Common Sense Housing. You have Coalition for San Francisco Neighborhoods, D Forward, Katherine Howard, La Playa Village with Steve Ward, Mid-Sunset Neighborhood Association, Neighborhoods United SF, Save Our Neighborhoods SF, Sunset-Parkside Education and Action Committee, and Sunset United Neighbors. So you can get from that long list that this is an important issue to the residents out in the Sunset area. We've already done this talk began in D3, and then we had it in D1, and because everyone found it to be very useful information, we're now formally a roadshow. So this is our third stop, and we'll of course continue on to D7, D8, D2, and wherever they want to hear about this. So I'll go ahead and get started and fill you in on what it is that's pressing on my mind, and I think a lot of the people in this room. So the agenda for today is going over what's happening. We'll start at a high level with what are the state mandates, and then get into very specifics with the San Francisco upzoning plan. Then we'll give a little reality check and talk about affordable housing and how it's actually built. And then we'll also show some solutions with community-centered solutions. Then we'll talk about an experience we've all been having for at least the last 7 years, which is our whack-a-mole. constantly fighting state bills that are coming down to the point that it's like a waterfall effect. And now we're at probably the culmination of that, starting in January of 2024. Coastal zone issues. Right now they're trying to develop on the coastal zone. Builder's remedy, you hear a lot about that. And then the state ballot initiative. And then finally, what's next? We'll talk a little bit about Neighborhoods United SF and how you can remain engaged. Okay, so what's happening? For those of you that are hearing this for the first time, the state has mandated all the cities in California to take their share of building more housing. The statement does say, okay, it's 82,000 for us in San Francisco. It's supposed to be a combination of both market rate housing and affordable housing. In our 82,000, roughly 46,000 of it needs to be affordable. The last 8-year cycle, so this needs to happen between 2023 and 2031. So in 8 years, we were supposed to build 82,000 units of housing, half of which are affordable. The last time they had an 8-year RENA cycle, the number we were supposed to hit was 28,000. So that's a significant increase, and I can tell you we didn't hit the 28,000 either. When you ask a city, any city, but in particular San Francisco, to build 82,000 units of housing, and you don't have any funds associated with it, we have an unfunded mandate. And if you think about 82,000 units of housing and 2.5 people per house, that's about 200,000 more people in San Francisco. We're 815 or whatever now, 825,000. That's a 25% increase in our population. And there is zero funding associated with the infrastructure for sewer, water, utilities, firefighters, police officers, teachers, all of it. There is no associated funding to grow our city by 25%. Now, the way that San Francisco and other cities have to comply with that mandate, there's lots of elements to it, but the part we're talking about tonight is the upzoning. That's the increasingly the capacity of the way builders can build in San Francisco, and that is the upzoning plan, which we'll go into more detail. So San Francisco has upzoned in the past. This is not the first time, but the focus for this 8-year round is on the northern and the western parts of San Francisco. You've seen plenty of development over in Dogpatch and over in Mission Bay. So the city has done a significant share of development over the years. But this last cycle, Sacramento and those that were writing the laws around this decided that the northern and the western parts of San Francisco needed to be even more dense than you already are. So the picture here, you can see it. I apologize for the vagueness of it, but that's the limitations of the technology. But if you go to, if you take a look at the site online, I'm going to click a couple more times. If you go to NUSF.net, which is Neighborhoods United SF.net, and on the home page there is an interactive map. If you click on it, you can zoom in and you can see specifically parcel by parcel how your neighborhood or your street or your community will be impacted, and it will identify, is that property now going to be allowed to build to 65 feet, 85, 140, whatever the numbers are. And the way we kind of look at it is that map, it covers large swaths of San Francisco without a lot of thought about the specific parcels that it's highlighting. It doesn't really account for historic properties. It doesn't really account for the topography of that community. We don't feel like it's a map that will in any way address the real issue, which is to bring more affordable housing into San Francisco. And most importantly with this map, there is no guarantee that if they upzone, let's say, a Judah Street to 85 feet, which is, when I say 85 feet, it's 8 stories, 140 feet is 14 stories, so just get rid of the zero. When they upzone it to 8 stories, there is the state density bonus. This is a state law that overrides our local zoning laws. So you can apply the state density bonus on top of current housing. You can do that today. Right now you have a 40-foot height limit in a lot of our communities. You can apply the state density bonus, get roughly 2.5 more stories, like another 2 stories. But with that, you're required to put some affordable housing into the project. But with the upzoning that's being proposed, there's no guarantee that 80 doesn't turn into 8 stories doesn't turn into 12, it doesn't turn into 16. So okay, I guess I'll forewarn you. This topic is wonky and it's complicated, and in part that's probably why most of us have not been paying attention over the last 7 years. There's a lot of acronyms and details that really do confuse us, even those of us that are deep in the weeds. So bear with us as we try to explain what's been happening and will be happening to your city. So right now, the upzoning plans, most of San Francisco's densely residential areas are about a 40-foot height limit. The upzoning plans go anywhere from, going up to 6 stories to 30 stories. But let's take an example of maybe out here in the Sunset area where they would be upzoning you roughly to 6 to 8 stories above your current 4. That would be today's upzoning. And then when you add the state density bonus, in many cases you could double the height of the existing lot. So now you're up to 12 to 16 stories. Then you add 2 more densities. There's density decontrol, which allows you to put as many units as possible into an existing frame. And then you throw the special sauce on top, which is the form-based density. And I'll try not to confuse you any further than that, but I can tell you in the end, you're gonna have what was a 4-story, turn into a 12, turn into upwards of 40 stories. And that's the way they take a lot and they compress it and they go upward. And there's real examples of this happening out in the Northeast waterfront, and Aaron can address that more when he speaks about it, but it's not hyperbole and it's not, we're not making it up. It's really possible.
Yeah, man.
Okay, another upzoning. So as I was saying, the city has already been upzoned. One of the recent laws that passed was 4 and 6 plexes. So you can take a single-family home or a 2-unit building, and you can turn it into a 4 or 6 plex. The 6 plex being on the corner lots. Right, the map there, which I know is really hard to see, but there's light blue along about 120,000 units fall under this upzoning. If you can go up to 4 units in those, or even 6, you're creating capacity upwards of 480,000 possible units. Now, of course, that will not all get built in our lifetimes, but it's capacity that allows it to happen. And that's really important to remember because the state is breathing down our necks that we have to show that in some way, shape, or form, we can get to 82,000. The picture next to it is important to understand in that some of these zoning laws, it's not just the corridors, it's not just the transit corridors, which is a lot of the focus, but in these maps, it's the entire blocks, it's an entire area. And when you start lopping all these laws, one on top of the other, and then the ADUs in the backyard, what you have now is going to change significantly. Your green belts in the backyard, that'll be the first place that things are going to start to encroach. So there's a lot more that goes into with these upzoning plans, the impacts of them that are being told. And that's why it's really important that you're here tonight, so we can share this with you. And you can share that with your 2 friends, you tell 2 friends, and so on.
What's that? You.
Okay, so recently, our efforts of Neighbors United, SF, and the associated organizations was to get the word out, to make a difference, to start to change the narrative in San Francisco. And I think we're getting heard because recently the mayor has recognized that her upzoning plans, which they are hers, because when, the planning department reports to the mayor, that her plans were getting a lot of blowback from the communities around the city. And so she put out the press release, basically, that explained some changes, maybe there'd be fewer high-rises. So maybe there wouldn't be as many 14-story or 24 or 30-story buildings. And it doesn't do anything to the 6, 8, 9, 12-story buildings. Good news is, they're listening. Bad news is, the results that they're coming up with might even be worse. So, this is an important thing to point out. When Sacramento gave us that number of 82,000, almost everybody that knows anything about zoning in the state knows that we will almost never make that number. Not just because of the density of our city and not the lack of availability of lots. It's because of the economic climate that we're in. I mean, with interest rates, it's a mandate that will never be met. So, first off, we're set up for short-term failure. San Francisco is the only city in the state of California that was given a 1-year review process. When you have these 8-year cycles, it's usually halfway through at 4 years, the state comes back and they go, well, how you doing? Are you on a trajectory? You're not? Okay, well now you're out of compliance. For us, our Senator Wiener put in an amendment at the 11th hour that said, no, San Francisco, you get reviewed after 1 year. So when you're reviewed after 1 year, that means that the state comes in, they look to see if we're hitting a trajectory, which is, as you know, probably very difficult. And if we don't hit it, we fall into what's called ministerial approvals. So first off, there'll be no neighborhood notification when a project's going to be happening in your area. And the permits are approved if the developer meets the zoning laws in place at that time. It's basically rubber stamped. So as I like to tell people, when the porta potty shows up, you know there's a project going on near you, because that's the first you're going to see of it. The longer term failure is when our housing element, which is the big picture of how San Francisco needs to meet its housing needs. Upzoning is just one part of it. But if the state deems that we have fallen out of compliance with our housing element, then it's called the builder's remedy. Even as the name denotes, it's for the builders. It's a benefit to the builders. First thing is, what it will do is it suspends the city's development standards and zoning laws, granting developers freedom to build without constraints. It results in the loss of state funding for transit and affordable housing, which is kind of ironic. We're trying to build affordable housing, yet if they feel we're out of compliance, we lose the funding for it. And finally, it ultimately becomes a state takeover of our planning department. So the way we feel about it is the builder's remedy is not the penalty, it's the plan.
Yeah, it's like it.
So here's some visuals. And again, it might be tricky to see, but do the best. This is focused in on the Sunset area, that portion of the map that applies to you guys. And you can see it's a variety of heights ranging from 65. Well, in your area, it goes up to 140. And that's usually at what they consider transit hub intersections. So in your area, there's streets that will be upzoned, include 19th Avenue, Sunset, 7th Avenue, Lincoln, Irving, Judah, Lawton, Noriega, Taravel, Vicente, and Sloat. I'm sure a lot of you live near or on those corridors. You may all be very familiar with this project. If you haven't, drive by Judah and 45th. That is an example of the future. You know, and you don't live in a flat neighborhood. You live on a slow incline. And so a lot of people are impacted by projects such as this. Here's another example. So that's how you look out into a lot of the Sunset in the Richmond looks like this. After the upzoning, it could look like this. It's a combination of 14 stories, 8 stories, and 6-story buildings along your commercial corridors. And very important, I want to reiterate, these heights do not preclude the state density bonus being applied on top of them. Here's some other examples, 19th and Irving. So this is just one building. That's a 14-story building at 19th. So 19th Avenue, you're driving down 19th Avenue on the corner of 19th and Irving is a 14-story building. Actually, all 4 corners can have a 14-story building, and then the rest of Irving can have 8-story buildings. But imagine driving down 19th Avenue, all 8 stories. Right now, as you know, it's mostly 2, 3, some 4 stories. When you drive around the city after tonight, and you come to an intersection, you look around, and you'll start doing what I do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And all of a sudden, I'm like, that's 8 stories? It's massive. It's big relative to the topography and the community that surrounds it. And we're not doing this overnight, so you're gonna have one building pop out amongst a whole community that's much, much lower. Ingleside, Paloma Street near Ocean Avenue, that's it right now. Beautiful little community, and that's what it looks like when West Portal gets upzoned. Keep going. So it's happening all over the city, so we thought we'd share with you some other communities. There's Cow Hollow, this is Lombard Street, so that's a very iconic vista for a lot of people who come visit San Francisco. And there you're gonna put 140, 14-story and 8-story buildings up and down all of Lombard Street. Not to mention Chestnut Street, Fillmore Street, and Union Street would go up to 65 feet. Western Addition. You have Gary Masonic. Do you know where your Trader Joe's is? So that, and again, this is just one little patch. We didn't fill out all the potential upzoning that occurs, but those are they're 24 and 30-story buildings around there. The Castro. This example shows you 80 feet on just one side of the block, but it will be both sides of the block.
Streets.
Northeast Waterfront, which has been in the news. This is an example of the density. When they start piling the densities, you have the upzoning, and then you have the state density bonus, and then you have the density decontrol, and then you have form-based density and EIEIO. And next thing you know, an 8-story building is 24 stories. We can get those. Okay, so why are the upzoning plans flawed? This is really important. And the deeper I've been gotten, inadvertently, or not because I woke up one day and said I want to be a zoning expert and walk around the city talking about this, but by default, and by my love of my neighborhood and my city, I think it was worthwhile. And what I've come to learn is that upzoning, particularly in a city such as San Francisco that's so densely populated and so desirable and so expensive, does not yield affordable housing. It doesn't work that way. So, first off, when you upzone a corridor, commercial corridor, pick any one of them. Let's just pick any lot. Let's say the lot's worth $2 million, the property's worth $2 million right now. Now that lot can go from 4 stories to 8 stories. The value of that lot just increased significantly. So it's kind of a backwards thought process. If you just increase the value of that lot, how are you ever going to build affordable housing on it? Now the land cost just doubled. So it doesn't even make sense to upzone in a city such as this and in other places that are so already densely packed. It also causes demolitions of the properties that exist there, which of course impact the renters and the small businesses that are in those buildings. It's unnecessary. This upzoning is unnecessary. San Francisco has ample capacity to build. And like I said, a lot of the building isn't done because of economic conditions. And developers are not going to build every corner, every block, because that only cannibalizes their own projects. You're going to build slowly so that the projects you build get bought. If you put too many in the market at once, then the prices in that whole area would be impacted by that.
Sorry.
So right now, our existing heights, if you just looked around the city with the existing height allowance, there's 141,000 unit capacity. So a 1-story that could go to a 4, a 2 that can go to a 4, other parts of the city where you can go even higher. So we have existing capacity today to build. The only reason it's often not built is developers will say, it doesn't pencil out for me. I can't build a 4-story building and make enough money. Okay, fair enough. That's not their fault. But the problem is, our state is putting the business of building affordable housing on the backs of for-profit developers. That doesn't make sense. They can't do it. So what they need is a lot of exceptions, one being height. We also have the 4 and 6 plexes we talked about, and we have 40,000 vacant units in San Francisco. Maybe we should unstick those first before we start building new stuff everywhere. It's excessive, as I mentioned earlier. We have a pipeline of 73,000. Now the state has applied some of our pipeline to our mandate, leaving about 36,000 units that we still need to meet. So you're like, oh, that's good. That's a relief. So if you think about that, we're already down to 36,000. Why aren't we applying some of the existing capacity, or the 4 and 6 plexes, or the ADUs, or all the other ways in which we can build but still respect the fabric of our city? I already mentioned earlier the fact that we're uniquely facing a 1-year penalty. We'll find out in a couple months if the state deems whether or not we were on track, and if not, then permits will go through ministerially. And finally, or second to finally, RHNA. So another name for that 82,000 is RHNA, Regional Housing Needs Assessment. and our arena is 82,000. It is a highly inflated number. Anyone that's in the business of zoning will tell you that we're never going to make that. And it's ineffective. So here's something, developers will put out a project, they use the state density bonus, or if they build a project over 10 units, they have to put a percent, usually 10% affordable. So the project of number that's trying to go up, and they can put in 15 units, but 2 of them need to be affordable. But then they fee out. They don't build those affordable units in the marina. They fee out to go into a pool of money that's used to build affordable elsewhere. So the project's built, it's 8 stories, got 15 units in it, all of which are market rate, if not luxury, because the building, of course, is taller than anything around it. So, of course, those are going to be very expensive units at the top. And so what happens is your neighborhoods become a piggy bank for affordable housing somewhere else.
Good thing. Okay, challenge and see.
That would be.
All right. All right, so my section will probably be a little faster. If there's one thing that I can really impart on everyone, it's money builds housing. At the end of the day, that's what we need to be focusing on. Historically, HUD, the federal government, actually spent money to develop or give money to develop affordable. We've seen that dry up. So I just want to say that is kind of my big overview. If you could go to the next one. So we also hear a lot about San Francisco's not building. Is that true?
No.
San Francisco's trying to build. We have, again, about 70,000 units in the pipeline. The problem is where things get stuck is with the funding. These are approved, the zoning's not the issue. So that's really want to impart that. We need money to build. And like Lori said, 73,000 units in the pipeline, about 15,000 are affordable. Some of these are going through, some of these are stuck. But we have a big pipeline here. We have a lot of units. What we need is the funding to really push it through. And as we know, market rate developers generally do not build unless they turn a profit, right? What we're seeing here is we had our housing goals from the previous RENA cycle. We exceeded the market rate goals, but we fell short of the affordable goals. So it's something to keep in mind. The market rate is not going to build it's not going to build us out of our affordability crisis. We also need $19 billion to meet our affordability needs. That's only San Francisco. So think about that, $19 billion. This includes the subsidies we're currently getting. So we're in a huge hole right to build our affordable. Again, the state mandate is currently unfunded. That's a problem for us. We're set up to know. This is just showing federal outlays, the amount that we spend on the military versus affordable housing. I think it speaks for itself. We need to think different. We need to think bigger. We have opportunities to build housing, not just relying on the market. That's something we always hear, market solves everything. We need to be creative. We're lacking $19 billion. We need to think of ways to actually get this affordable housing generated. There's certain things we can do. There's land trusts, there's housing cooperatives. Something that I think is very exciting is Supervisor Peskin is currently working on what's called the Marshall Plan for Middle Income Housing. Essentially, we can use private debt to fund middle income housing for people. It's very exciting. I'm assuming we'll talk more about it when he gets out. But we just need to think a little bit differently and use all the tools in our toolbox. Not just market can build, because it just quite frankly won't. But we can be creative, we have the tools. A lot of it is just political will to actually use to get this stuff done.
All
right, and then just briefly to talk about kind of what we're losing in the process.
One's couple two. That's about two. Good.
So the group RepSF, Race and Equity in All Planning, if you're not familiar with them, look them up, repsf.org. They've identified 170 legacy businesses that are slated for the rezoning areas. Legacy businesses are businesses that have been around for 30 plus years and serve the community. Check it out on the legacybusiness.org. But these are just a couple of examples of those in this area. These buildings are at risk by this plan. We have no plan to sustain these businesses, to help them move if they need to. So this is what we'll be losing in the process as well. And I think that's my time. Good. Yeah, money builds housing.
Hello, my name is Dennis Richards.
I didn't see you.
Okay, well, I can see this. Okay, thank you. This is an interesting video of doing it this time. I used to be a planning commissioner for 6 years, from 2014 to 2020. If any of you came before the planning commission, hopefully you realize that I also listen to the neighborhoods. listen to tenants, listen to neighbors who had issues with projects next to them. And
Good place to your phone off, sit there.
one of the things that used to really cheer me up was when I had a really contentious issue between one neighbor and the other. We had the planning commission where they kind of appealed the project. We heard of both sides, meticulously made a decision on it. I would actually get thank you cards from both sides. The people that won, the people that lost, saying, you heard me. So I want to let you know that's my background. So I've been at this for the last probably 8 years since Scott Wiener went to Sacramento. He's actually, been kind of on a rampage with the legislation he's introduced. We've been involved in this kind of whack-a-mole, thing where, boom, the mole comes up. Oh my God, we won. Boom, the mole comes up, and it's, I only have to say, and the word I want to use on this is it's a carpet bombing from Sacramento onto us. And they are eroding your ability to control it in your neighborhood. And it's pretty tragic. Let me put it in context here. This is from the American Planning Association. I read this today. In the past few years, the California legislature has upzoned just about everything that could be upzoned in the name of housing. Transit-oriented areas, job-rich areas, high-resource neighborhoods, malls, big box stores, campuses, church parking lots, and yes, your backyard, or at least many backyards. By the way of ADs and Senate Bill 9 and the duplex law. Here's the punchline. From the Planning Association, seemingly the only place left to upzone is the Pacific Ocean. Well, I wouldn't put it past Scott Wiener to upzone the Bay and the ocean, to be frank with you. One of the things that one of the developers wrote about this morning in a piece in the Standard, his name is Cyrus. He's the guy that's doing the Masonic in kind of Geary projects where she showed up there with Trader Joe's, this Lucky Penny site, actually was an old diner. He writes here, the yes in my backyard folks, and actually I want to tell you, it's not yes in my backyard, it's yes in your backyard. They want to tell you what you're going to do, not what they're going to do. He says here that they've had an all or nothing attitude. And it needs to be replaced with a more flexible stance avoiding centrists, people who actually care about housing, affordable housing, without all the crap that they have to deal with in the wedge issues. He also goes on to say, the wedge issues that Scott Wiener and the crew have put out would be letting the state impose blanket construction rules, push for seemingly unlimited height limits, eliminating single-family zoning. Here's one, repealing Proposition 13 property tax limits. Apparently that's something in the works, so be ready for it. Banning automobiles and trying to force zero parking on all projects. This is what the state's been up to, okay? I don't know about you, but I'm fatigued from the state telling us what to do, quite frankly. I took it as that we feel the same way. Thank you. Okay, here we go. On to what's happening here. So we have something called Our Neighborhood Voices. It is a state constitutional ballot initiative. We're trying to get it on the 2026 ballot. Movements take years. Prop 13 and the Howard Jarvis movement took years, took 10 years. We've been at this now for roughly 4 years, actually. The thing that prevented us from getting on the 2024 ballot was when we had our title and summary in 2022, Rob Wanta was Attorney General for about a month. And our title and summary came back reasonable. It actually, I guess one of his staffers did it, and he went by him, and he didn't realize that it actually was neutral to our ballot initiative. This go around, we got the crap kicked out of us in the title and summary. You'd have think that we'd be killing your firstborn child. What it did was it actually added more constant time for us to be able to get on the ballot for November 2024. There was a certain timeline everything has to happen. We never would have made it if we had to litigate. And we'll have to build that into the timeline next time. Okay? So our neighborhood voices, it's the neighborhood remedy. Your remedy, not the builder's remedies. Okay? Did you know, since 2017, there were nearly 300 housing bills coming out of Sacramento that were passed, not introduced, passed. You heard the guy from planning say, we can't keep up, it's just crazy. This year, an additional 146 bills have been introduced. 146. We have attorneys who can't even keep track of them. Planners don't even know what to do because some of these bills conflict with each other, some of them are additive to each other. It's just nuts. It's really nuts.
Asking it.
Local democracy no longer exists for our city leaders or you, right? We wrote it in 2022, I believe it was June or November, Prop C and Prop D, about streamlining the production of housing, streamlining housing approvals. Both measures lost, yet Senator Wiener doesn't really care what you think. He's introducing legislation to override the will of the voters, right? One of his pieces actually says if a city wants to zone for or build 10 units on any parcel, even if the voters come back and say no, we're going to have a referendum on this in our city. SB 10, that law actually negates the voters. It has been held up in court. So there you go. Your voice doesn't matter anymore. Sacramento's telling you, shut up and sit down. You'll pay the bill when all this stuff happens, as Lori said. Oh, and by the way, you deal with the consequences. Traffic gridlock, no place to park your car, not enough parks, not enough libraries, all those different things. Not enough affordable housing. Thank you. Okay, we can try to fight new bills one bill at a time. We're done with that. It's over. There's no way to undo any bills. There's this one bill called the Housing Accountability Act, the governor signed, where we can't even try to undo some of the things that Sacramento has done. The city can't, and they're tying our hands. So, there was leadership over here by Board President Peskin and Supervisor Chan on the Northeast waterfront. That was a downzoning. I'm waiting for the lawsuit to come ahead from the other side saying, you can't downzone because this bill says that you can't downzone. Okay? If we fight a bill and win, another one comes back next year. We had SB 827, we killed that bill. Then we had SB 50, and we killed that bill. It's tragic. We can't keep up. We're volunteers. We don't draw salaries. The California YIMBY, the YIMBYs in San Francisco, they draw hundreds of thousands of dollars in salaries. Let me tell you this, they're not activists. They're paid lobbyists. So when you hear about YIMBY, make sure you realize they're getting paid, okay? There's so many bills coming so fast, we can't keep up. We lost the war, let's face it. We've lost the war, right? There's only one way out. Our neighborhood voices, state the constitutional ballot issue, returning your voice to planning at a local level. Hold on a bit. Your voice being heard at a local level, as well as, I've lost my place here, I'm really sorry, this thing's comes on a roll. Keep going. Okay. Sorry about that, folks. New bills devastating our coastline. So, they're not satisfied with upzoning everything, including your kitchen sink, right? Now they're after the coast. So, 1972, the voters overwhelmingly passed the Coastal Act against all odds. Nobody was for it in the state legislature, governor, all the press was against it. Yet at 55%, 45% won at the state level. I don't know if any of you remember that, which created the Coastal Act and the Coastal Commission. Okay? Now, SB 951, Scott Wiener wanted to take out the coastal zone, San Francisco out of the coastal zone. Prior to this bill that he introduced, he actually had this bill, this SB 423, which Lori talked about, that sets a review for San Francisco every year, unlike any other jurisdiction in the state. And in that bill, he excluded the coastal zone. So you go and tell me, is that sincerity? I'm going to introduce a bill that excludes the coastal zone, and guess what? 6 months later, a year later, I'm going to introduce one that actually takes the coastal zone out, San Francisco out of the coastal zone. That's sneaky. Let's face it, that's really sneaky.
That's correct.
And correct. It also takes out the Coastal Commission from adjudicating land use issues. So I guess I have to say this, it's really a problem, a solution in need of a problem. We've had, I think, one appeal to the Coastal Commission in 1988. In the 52-year history of the Coastal Commission, we had one appeal. But if you talk to the MB folks, oh my God, the Coastal Commission's in your backyard, it's telling you what to do. You can't do that, it's causing housing loss, blah, blah, blah. When Scott Wiener introduced this SB 951, his rationale was the state shouldn't be telling cities what to do in their coasts. Go figure, you've been telling us what to do everywhere else. And now you're using that as justification to take our voice away in the coast. That's crap, let's face it. There's a lot of other bills attacking our coastline. They're coming out. A lot of them have backed off, but let me tell you, it's a shell game. And the shell game is, here's the shell, you put the P under the walnut shell, and you move it around, and Scott Wiener says, look, no P. I didn't put the coastal zone in this walnut, this law. Yet he'll tell you over here, assembly person or senator, you put the P, you move the things around, and guess what? Scott took it out of his bill, but somebody else didn't have it in their bill. That's just how they work. So it's a collusion to get this stuff done. The only problem that I see why we would take San Francisco out of the coastal bill is the developers don't have the ability to build high rises and make money. That's the problem that this solution is trying to solve. Let's face it. We know that if this bill passes, all the coastal cities will be out of the coastal zone. He will he will basically gut the Coastal Act. That's not what we want. Coastal Act, this district is in the coastal zone from the water line, I think 1,000 feet. Some of it juts around, there's some things. Interestingly enough, one parcel that was in the coastal zone, keep going. This parcel, this is not, wouldn't be in the coastal zone, right? So take a look. I went to Miami in January, and I saw what their coast looks like. I don't know if you want to have 100 of these buildings there, but that's what Miami looks like. I literally can spit across the balcony and hit somebody in the next building. That's how packed they are. And let me tell you, when they talk about having objective design standards, when they add the density bonus and say to a developer, you get to pick and choose what you want to abide by or not. Those objective design standards sound really nice, but they evaporate because the developer says, hey, I'm going to take a height limit increase, forget about the lot lines, the setbacks, all that. I'm going to do whatever I want. This is what we're facing. Honestly, I'll bet my last dollar that this is what we're going to see. This passes. The other thing is, all these nice pictures don't have shadows. So we had a total solar eclipse last week, or this week, I can't remember, about Tuesday, right? Some of these people are going to be living in a total solar eclipse from this building. So let's make sure that we understand all the impacts too, not just, oh, it's a tall building, it's ugly. There's going to be a shadow that's going to be cast on a lot of people as the sun moves around. Okay, interestingly enough, this is on Twitter, some guy named John. Interesting, Brian Hanlon, he's the CEO of California YIMBY, pulls in nearly $300,000 a year, right? And owns a single family home in Bernal Heights. You go figure. I want to show up with a backhoe and a megaphone and say, Brian, we need to build a 10-unit building in your front lawn. It's got a big front lawn. Why aren't you doing that? This is the hypocrisy we're seeing. Oh, and by the way, I want to make sure you see the photo up there in the top right corner. The man from real estate, Scott Wiener. As I said, working to qualify the initiative to get on the ballot. We want to make sure that local laws can, with the jurisdiction's approval, they can institute the law that the state has passed, or they can opt out of it. It's prospective and retroactive. Okay? Work for affordable housing. Absolutely. So what we said was, if the state wants to come in and say, for 100% affordable projects, you can do this or you can do that, we're okay with that. Because that's what we stand for. It's a real affordable housing, not just market rate housing everywhere. The solution to this are neighborhood voices. I left a flyer and an envelope out for everybody to take home. Hopefully you'll take home and take a look at it. Consider going on our website, signing up for the list that you supported, and maybe we need donations. These are heavy lifts, honestly. Statewide initiatives take money, lots of money. So we'll win. We did polling. You asked this question, it's on your handout. Miraculously enough, I think everybody got it. 65% of the electorate said, we get it. We want to have your voices in the local councils where the decisions are made closest to the individual citizen actually prevail. Okay, there is our initiative. Those of you that are on the Zoom want to scan that, you can see, it'll take you to our website. And that's what I have. Thank you.
Okay, so next steps. Okay, so this is where we come full circle with Neighborhoods United SF, because as you know, a lot of stuff out there that's impacting the quality of life in your neighborhood. How do we get more affordable housing in San Francisco without destroying what it is we love about San Francisco in the process? So we now have this alliance of about 60 different neighborhood associations, and that's just the northern and the western side of San Francisco. The merchant corridors and different associations. That says a lot. This started in Thanksgiving, of course. That's when everything starts, right in the middle of the holidays. So it's been a short amount of time to pull this many associations together that are rowing in the same direction with the common goal is to notify and educate and mobilize San Franciscans who care about this issue. We're challenging the upzoning assumptions. First off, the fact that we can even build 82,000. The RHNA numbers are wrong, been wrong from the start. And we're starting to hear rumors and bubbling up within the state, particularly in San Diego, where they want to revisit the RHNA numbers. It's not like they're locked in a vault. But most of San Francisco's politicians, at least our leadership in the mayor's office, who would be the one that would speak out against this, have not. They basically accepted the numbers at face value versus at least, if you have to do it, you have to do it. But you can say, I'm doing it with holding my nose. You don't have to just say, okay, we'll do these numbers and let's just upzone the city to get there. Demand safeguards. Part of what we want to do is continually beat the drum to say that don't destroy what makes San Francisco beautiful in the process to try to grow it. You can do both. And we want to protect what the small businesses and the renters that are vital to what keeps San Francisco special. Increase the awareness, like tonight. We're going to be doing this as, like I said, a roadshow. You can follow us, groupies. We wanted to make upzoning a key issue in the political campaign. I believe we have done that. I think that a lot of the candidates wanted to talk about, and rightly so, the situation with crime in our city, the situation with homelessness, big important issues, all of us. But all of those issues will ebb and tide over time. Hopefully they will get better in the years to come. But it's not permanent. When your neighborhood changes, it'll never go back. So think about that. This is a once-in-a-lifetime change to San Francisco that will be permanent. You know about the Fontana Towers out by Fisherman's Wharf? Don't you drive by there and go, who let that happen? Well, we're not going to let this happen, okay? And then we wanted to mobilize for the statewide ballot initiative, and then just to give you a sense of what's happening, everything seems to be on hold right now. I think with the mayor kind of ducking and covering on this issue, it seems like the planning department has gone into a bit of a regrouping. So we don't know what's coming out next, but I can guarantee you it's not going to be pretty. But we'll keep you informed. If you've signed up for our newsletter, just go to our website, nusf.net. Make sure if you sign up for updates, at least you'll get a newsletter knowing what's happening. So I'm going to end this here. Everyone out there in Zoom land, we're going to just take questions here locally, but please go to info@neighborhoodsunitedsf.org and send us your questions, and we will make sure you get an answer. Okay, we'd like to now introduce our guests, and they can bring it home. We're going to start with Connie, and we'll finish it off with Aaron. Oh yeah, so I'm going to...
Right, give me a Cadillac, good for this.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Connie Chan. I'm District 1 Supervisor. I'm representing the Richmond. I'm really proud to represent the Richmond. It's really also really Richmond is not an island. We're deeply connected on the west side with Sunset neighborhood, so it's good to be with the Sunset neighborhood and neighbors here today. I think that with all the technical aspects of things, I'm going to bring a little bit of a personal touch to this situation and this dynamic. I was born in Hong Kong. And so for those of you who have visited Hong Kong, you know Hong Kong is and was already, I was born in 1978, so it was already a very dense city, and it's increasingly dense, and but it was never and still not affordable. So I think that's one lesson that I take away when I think about housing issue. Then I came here 1989 and 1990 to San Francisco's Chinatown, and with my single mom and living in Chinatown with starting with my auntie and uncle in Chinatown in one bedroom, very small, and that's how my mom eventually got a job, and we, again, one bedroom in Chinatown, very small family. Today, I'm a homeowner in Richmond because my family was able to support us to buy our first home in Outer Richmond. Now that's a story of the immigrant in San Francisco, and I know that I am not unique, but today I am, that for the future. And so we know we need to build affordable housing, and we need to build housing for those so that they can come here like my family did and stay here and thrive. But upzoning does not equate to affordability. And I think that that's really what I'm trying to explain here. Looking at Hong Kong, looking at where I've been in San Francisco, I would like to say that from my lived experience, I know that upzoning and density doesn't always mean that we can deliver affordable housing or housing that people can afford here. So I think that's just one thing that I really want everybody to think about as we're moving forward with this housing conversation. One thing about it, Joe, that I really wanted to highlight what Lori has said today that's slightly different than what we talked about in Richmond, because now that the mayor has explained that the plan has changed. In fact, Chronicle said less Hong Kong but more Paris is really the mayor's plan. But let me just say for the Richmond and for Sunset, that plans mean 8 to 9 stories everywhere. So instead of 14 stories or 8 stories or 8 stories on Gary, 14 stories in some intersections, and 8 stories all along Fulton, now it's everywhere in the Richmond, and really majority part of Sunset as well. So when we talk about really planning and upzoning, they are not thinking about people. And in my opinion, they're people who are working families already in Richmond and Sunset. They're a small business like Green Apple, and just all the wonderful small business on Clement, and then also Shanghai House, a great dumpling place on Balboa. If you look at these business, they do not have tenants on top, so by right, they can be buy out and demolish and upzone 8 to 9 stories all across. Is that what we really want? And is that really meaningful planning for our city? I don't think so. I think we can do better. I think we can be thoughtful. And I want to give you an example in Richmond is Alexandra Theater. That, it's a abandoned theater for a long time, and we're working toward turning it into housing. And it's gonna work, and we can also do housing with its history, preserved. We're doing housing of 100% affordable housing at 4200 Gary. It's a corner lot, and we're building 98 units of it for seniors. And it can be done, but those are thoughtful planning. They're not just one size fits all and decide we're just going to do it everywhere. Now, I think Lori also has mentioned, and we should all know that in the Richmond currently, we could already build 4 stories, even on our single-family plots, because that was a law that we passed. We can also do 6plexes, but I actually wanted to clarify 6plexes is not just 6 units. 6plex is actually really in this law, in the corner lot is 6 stories. So we already can't do 6 stories on the west side in the corner lots. These are the laws that are already passed by the supervisor. So we want to build, we can build. Again, two keys to building housing, affordable housing especially, is really land and money. And what Peter has said, it's really money that really make it work. So upzoning is just laws. It doesn't deliver us affordable housing. Thank you.
So at this point, I'd like to introduce Board President, Supervisor Peskin.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Renee, and everybody from the Sunset and the Parkside for coming out tonight. I have been disheartened for a number of years and felt a little lonely. I think Connie and I, Supervisor Chan and I, have felt lonely. And one of the things I just heard is there's a lot of money in the development business. And when you showed that slide of the evolution, the pivot last week from the upzoning proposal to the new back of the envelope upzoning proposal, at the bottom were some organizations with names. And I know those organizations, and I know the faces and the individuals associated with those organizations. And they approach me and my colleagues on the Board of Supervisors, and they are all paid. And some of them, by the way, are commissioners, so you can actually go online and look at their Form 700s and see how much they're paid. I'm paid to represent you, and I appreciate your paying me for this, but it has been a lopsided conversation for quite some time, where there have been voices that have been missing from City Hall. Tip O'Neill, one of the great speakers of the House of Representatives, was known to say that all politics are local politics, but in San Francisco, when I first was elected, the word was, in San Francisco, all politics was land use. That's not true anymore. As a matter of fact, the amount of preemption that Dennis and Lori and Peter spoke to is astonishing, particularly given that historically the state of California left land use and zoning to local communities, as compared to other areas of public policy like transportation, where there was a common interest in making sure that transportation that goes from one municipality, one county to another, be governed by the state because there was a common state interest. That is no longer the case around land use, really because of the finding that California has a housing crisis. San Francisco is the densest city in the state of California. It is the second densest city in the United States of America. And I submit to you that we have a crisis. It's an affordable housing crisis as opposed to a housing crisis writ large. Say whatever you want to say about San Francisco, it is still an incredible place to live. It is still incredibly attractive to people around the country, around the state, around the world. And look, when Nancy and I moved here 35 years ago, to people who had middle-class jobs, could afford to buy a place that is, out of reach now. So we do have things that I think this city needs to address. Unfortunately, the conversation that has become so polarized and so hyperbolic is doing us all a disservice, because amnesty preemption is not helping. We're not having a public policy conversation about how to accommodate affordable housing. As Lori said, I think she actually stole my line, we can be pro-housing and pro-neighborhood. Those are not mutually exclusive. And I think the way this us versus them thing has been cast, it has been cast in such radical terms that we're unable to have, the second you start having a rational conversation around public policy, what the range of choices are, how you can achieve affordability. Where Connie and I sit, you are immediately cast as being anti-housing. Well, let me tell you, I've been in office for most of the last quarter of a century. I presided over the upzoning of the eastern neighborhoods, the Hunters Point, Shipyard, Candlestick Point, Rincon Hill, Park Merced, Eastern and Western Soma, and the list goes on. That's capacity of 115,000 units. I had to do the math because the Chronicle called, so we had to do the math. And by the way, since 2005, 51,000 units of housing has been built in this town, and there are 71,000 units of approved entitled housing in the pipeline that is not being built because it is not profitable right now because interest rates, which Connie and I don't control, are too high, and actually the guy from the Housing Action Coalition said it, the rents are too damn low.
That's right.
Okay? These things will change, and when they do change, we shouldn't rip San Francisco asunder. San Francisco is the envy of the world in large part because we have learned from our mistakes. We owe a debt of gratitude to citizen activists. The reason we don't have a freeway that went through Golden Gate Park is thanks to activists like Supervisor. We learned the lesson of cutting ourselves off from our cherished waterfront that is the envy of cities around the world and ripped down the Embarcadero Freeway after the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake. Thank you, Art Agnos and the Board of Supervisors at that time. And let's also acknowledge our past. This is also a city and a state that has a history of having redlined certain neighborhoods. And this is we have a terrible history with redevelopment that was actually allowed under state law that decimated the Western Addition and the Fillmore. Let's not repeat those mistakes. Let's figure out how to have people age in place, raise their families in vital communities. We learn things from smart planners and smart neighborhoods that we've been engaged in about how to make a neighborhood whole with parks and the kind of amenities that we raise our families in. Let's not forget that. So this entire conversation has been cast in such a way that rational conversations and rational policymakers are just being shouted down and silenced. And so I am very heartened when I see this roadshow going around town, and I remember that actually San Francisco is full of very smart, very rational people, and we can work together to actually implement solutions that we need to implement. And those are around affordability. And yes, that might mean more density in certain places that we need to think about it and have a conversation about it. Right now, much of what is going on, and a lot of this emanates from the state, is a dynamic where we're shutting the public out. We are getting rid of public noticing. We are getting rid of all of the opportunities to petition your government through due process at the Planning Commission. That's what by right means. You don't have, what drives the YIMBY crazies is the fact that, as former Commissioner Dennis Richard knows, there is a right in San Francisco to petition your government through discretionary review. By the way, it doesn't happen that often, and to the extent that it happens, mostly the developers win, and the neighborhood appellant generally loses. I mean, that's been the history long before state preemption, but now even those avenues are being shut off. So I think that I want to end with this, which is the issue really is about financing. The issue is really how do we pay for affordable housing? What are the public policies around affordable housing? A number of years ago, when short-term rentals appeared on the horizon, my first take on it was, hey, we've had that for 100 years. It used to be called the classified ads, then it was called Craigslist. You want to rent your place out for the weekend when you're out of town? I don't care, it's fine with me. But when you go and have a speculative situation where somebody goes and takes the 5-unit apartment building off the market and turns it into a 365-day-a-year-old hotel that is taking housing away. That's not acceptable. And by the way, interestingly enough, the mayor at that time, Ed Lee, was opposed to our regulating Airbnb. When we finally actually got the legislation passed, Airbnb sued us. We ultimately prevailed, and we now actually have a rational scheme that has been well thought out. And people are able to rent their places without getting rid of affordable housing. Rent control has been a godsend in San Francisco.
No.
It has been a godsend in San Francisco. I mean, listen, Nancy and I are small landlords, and I understand that it has its complications, but that's something that we should think about relative to development where, again, the state has preempted us, and we cannot apply that beyond buildings built beyond 1979. But fundamentally, there is a role that government can play by being the issuer of tax-exempt bonds at much lower interest rates to actually build middle-class housing for people who want to live and work here, for our sanitation drivers, for our cops, for our healthcare workers, for our hotel workers, for everyday people. And you'll be hearing more about that, but I think that there is a mechanism for actually building the kind of housing that we need. And by the way, that is not what is happening. The reason you see proposals for 50-story towers on the Great Highway, proposals for 270-foot towers along the Northeast waterfront at $2,000, $2,200 a square foot, isn't about solving San Francisco's housing crisis. It is about selling view units that have a view of the Golden Gate and the Bay Bridge and the Marin Headlands, and the people who buy those things have a place in Singapore and a place in London and a place in New York City. So that's not real housing, but it does really destroy some of our historic neighborhoods. So let's learn a little bit, and I cannot encourage you enough to get involved when it is. I think the Yimbies have done a pretty good job of scaring people, of keeping them out, of protesting in ways that have diminished the historic positioning of your government that you are all used to. So don't be scared. Come down to City Hall. Send us all emails. The Yimbies are very good at the internet, and so when a pin drops, they will send us 1,200 emails. We need 1,200 emails from the neighborhoods of San Francisco. And I think that will get us all back in the game, and we can go back to having rational policy conversations and moving San Francisco forward and developing the kind of housing that we need and deserve. So thank you a lot, Maureen and Peter, and the election.
Thank you all of you very much. It was a wonderful presentation, wonderful comments. I love it. Now we're going to go to the question and answer portion of these evening. I'm going to call up two of our team here because they have some questions, and we'll go right to it. Again, I'm going to ask everybody, please try to keep it to a minute between question and answer portion. Keep it respectful, keep it concise, to the point, and please line up here if anybody wants to ask a question and come up to the mic. Come right in.
Great. This question is actually for the supervisors. So, over the weekend I went to Treasure Island. They're doing a $2 to $3 billion project over there. They're putting roads in, water, sewer, everything that they need. They're compacting the soil, they're putting in the seawalls, they're doing everything. Why is the city doing things backwards here? They're doing it right over there. They're not doing it right here. They're just coming into neighborhoods, throwing things in, and then after the fact, then we have to worry about having water, adequate water for the houses and for the fire hydrants. I don't know if most people know out here, but we don't have high water pressure hydrants out here. We don't have the right equipment out here for if we have major fires. So the infrastructure is not getting put in. It's kind of a backwards way of doing it from what I see. And what can we do to influence you guys, all the supervisors and the mayor, to actually get things right and to do things the right way?
And out.
So look, there are areas of the city in Treasure Island that's one of them. The shipyard is another. Mission Bay was a third, where you kind of start with a relatively blank slate and you can do all sorts of things. Ultimately, we need a chief executive who is willing to have a rational conversation about what is appropriate development and how we take care of our neighborhoods. I think that's the ultimate answer. We have a strong narrow system of government, narratives to the contrary notwithstanding. That is how the charter of the city and county of San Francisco is designed. Relative to having, for those of you who do not know what an auxiliary water supply system is, after the 1906 earthquake in the couple of decades that followed, as the eastern side of the city was rebuilt, a redundant water system was installed. If you see around town, particularly on the east side, you'll see fire hydrants that are extraordinarily large, and the lids of those fire hydrants are painted one of three colors based on where the water is coming from. So it's all gravity fed, no pumping required, and the west side has long needed and deserves a investment in a AWSS system, which Supervisor Chan has actually probably moved forward more than anybody in the last 20 years. There are now actually very real plans for building AWSS pipeline for 19th and out Sunset Lake.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. Please.
Hi, this is kind of more of a statement than a question. Funding forward, yeah. Kathy Howard. So SB 9 closer. Okay. SB 951 proclaims wants to remove San Francisco's coastline from the coastal zone in order to build housing. If you look really closely at the map, you will find that a large part, the western part of Golden Gate Park, is also removed from the coastal zone by this legislation. This will deprive the park of the extra protection that the Coastal Commission now provides. And those of you know me that I am not a fan of our practice park department, which is hell-bent on privatizing and commercializing our parks. So they would love to have that part of the park without anybody telling them what they can and can't do there. So my question is, think about it, Liz. Look at that map, look at all the buildings, and look how they're trying to sneak this in. Why remove parkland in the coastal zone? What are the developer plans? And the UBs and Senator Nohr are financed by the developers. Wouldn't they love to have that to build on? So I think more than our neighborhoods are under attack, our backyards, our open space is under attack. And, you know, a lot of people here, I think, cooperate, and please, that's it. It's more of a statement than a question, but perhaps the...
Ms. Howard, I do want to respond to that. Senate Bill 951 was, to my mind, actually a turning point for the Board of Supervisors. It is the first time that the board took action to actually stand up to our own state senator. I have no idea why State Senator Weaver wanted to diminish the Coastal Act in his own city and county. But by way of background, in 1972, the voters of the state of California created the Coastal Commission. For 52 years, the lands along the Pacific Ocean, going back to about 45th Avenue, have been under the jurisdiction of the California Coastal Commission, although the city and county of San Francisco, since 1986, when the Coastal Commission approved our local coastal plan, actually issues development permits in that area. Senator Weiner, the sponsor of Senate Bill 951, is the mayor of the city and county of San Francisco, and the author is State Senator Weiner. I don't know why he doesn't like his city. Interestingly enough, the argument was that this had been inhibiting housing development in the coast. We've issued every permit that has been applied for There have been 2 appeals in 52 years of a coastal development permit in the San Francisco coastal zone. One of them having nothing to do with housing. They were actually an appeal that Ms. Howard was involved in 2009, having to do with the AstroTurf field and the lighting at the western end of Golden Gate Park. And the second one was in 1989 and was never even, the appeal was not even heard by the Coastal Commission. So this was a solution looking for a problem. The Board of Supervisors voted 8-3 veto-proof to oppose that bill, and Ms. Howard, Senator Wiener dropped the provisions in Section 1 that carved San Francisco out. So we are still in the coastal zone as it was enacted in 1976 by the state legislature. And you guys all, I heard more from people in the Sunset and the Richmond than I'd ever heard before. And thank you, Supervisor Chan, for voting for that.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for the comments, Supervisor. I really appreciate the sentiment of housing and pro neighborhood. Oh, closer? Okay. What was I going to say? So yeah, I appreciate the comments that you can be pro housing, pro neighborhood, and that we do have affordability crisis. And I guess you have a loon thing to help with that. That sounds cool. But one comment struck me, of course, that I think you said you're joking, but you said the rent is too low. Which is probably nice. I'm right, Jeffrey. The rent isn't that, but I used to live in the Midwest, and rent's a lot lower there. So I was wondering, why do you think housing is so expensive here, or has to be this expensive? They can afford to put up buildings back in the West, but why not? That's my question.
And just so we're clear on the rent is too low comment, that was actually me repeating a comment made by the Housing Action Coalition representative at the San Francisco Planning Commission, which was really an admission that they want higher rents. Higher rents give you better pro formas when you're borrowing money from a bank. Historically, a number of things. San Francisco has a lot of well-paid individuals who in recent years have come to San Francisco, and let's talk about it. Our downtown was, for most of our lives, populated by finance, insurance, real estate. In the last 15 years or so, it became a predominantly tech business model. Why? Because tech workers greatly prefer the excitement and vitality of San Francisco to the staid campuses of Sunnyvale and the Peninsula, and you welcome them with open arms. And they're also very well compensated, and that had an impact on rents. I mean, Bay Area has always been expensive as compared to the Midwest, no question about that, but I think that had an outsized impact on driving rents up in San Francisco, which is precisely why we have an obligation to really address head-on the affordability crisis. And I think that is on all of us, and how we accommodate that and where we accommodate that. It was Lori who actually showed me an article this was a bunch of months ago. Let's stop with the YIMBY NIMBY thing and get into the WIMBY thing, which is where in our backyard. I mean, how do we do this in a way we're very smart? And by the way, just in the last several years, we've got rid of single-family zoning. You can build fourplexes all over the city. We've created capacity for hundreds of thousands of units. That doesn't mean that they get built. Governments do zoning, but they don't build housing. So I mean, I think if we're having a real conversation about achieving something, it gets back to the issue of how do we create the kind of conduits for financing to build things that are affordable to people who make 100% of area median income, even 120% of area median income. as opposed to market rate housing that is not affordable probably to anybody in the surrounding political supervisor.
I feel like in the, or like what are the averages in the West Side? I don't see it. Other than this.
I think in the Midwest, certainly San Francisco, as what Roger said, land, they're not making it anymore. We have a very limited landmass. We're surrounded by water on 3 sides. I don't think that is an issue that is happening in Cleveland or Cincinnati. And this is a city that, despite our struggles of recent years, continues to have a ton of demand. And in the current moment that we're in, interest rates are sky high for development.
Thanks. So let's go.
Next, please.
So does it look at the college was either
am I correct that San Francisco is a charter city? Am I correct? Yes,
that's right.
that means home rule, doesn't it?
Yes.
Why can't we take back control of our home? Okay, instead of the developers, outsiders, and stuff like that. We should be in control of our neighborhoods. I know a lot of people don't think of the history of the Sunset like they do the North Beach and stuff like that. But we're really happy with our little place out here. And that picture you showed of that 50-story building. Gee, my son lives across the street, and Renee lives across the street. And I wrote an article about it. Will it sink or fall over? Because it is sinking, okay? It is something. So I'd like to see us take that control of our neighborhoods. I belong to our neighborhood voices, and I want you to know that, okay? Thank you.
But
You think that home rule?
Who do you want that addressed to, my dear?
Thank you.
Okay. Who wants to field that?
No, it's okay, you don't really need to.
Okay.
The thing that won't take back her role is our neighborhood voices ballot initiative, let's face it.
Next, please.
so I said,
Hi, my name is Sam Fleischman, and I'm a bit of an interloper. I'm from the District 8. So, this is an outstanding... Thank you. Outstanding road show. It's really well done. Love the way you wrote having the distinct pieces. I understand that they're very clear, and I'm not great at reading rooms, but I feel like most people were not for the Upzoning. I guess my feedback style as a question is for people not like those agents who realize we have a problem here. I wonder if we could emphasize more that what Dennis was saying, we have all of these laws that just come into place. We don't know how they're going to play out. We don't know what's going to happen. What you were saying about this stuff is permanent. Let's wait. Let's see how this plays out. We don't need more laws, more regulations, more upzoning till we see what's already happened. See how the rest of this stuff plays out. And I think you can pull more of the people who really don't know how they feel about this into our side by just saying, let's wait. Let's just hang on and see how it plays out. That's my feedback. But this is great. Come to my district because I know you're going to want people's work. Watch that.
When Hurting said a resident the Parkside when they lived in 20 days and he heard them.
Here, listen. Checking my
I'm wondering if there's any way to generally estimate the value that's going to be transferred to property reached by this Upzoning. I know bring a shop on a Joe's ice cream over in Brexmont. And it's a legacy business that, yes, there was some considering this that identified with and she impacted by this legislation. But he told me that just a couple of years ago, this was been sold. And so, honestly, this is, I think there's a tremendous increase in value. Say that would certainly make the property value. His building will be saved, it'll be torn down, and it'll be built out. What are we looking at? We're trying to take a look at our investors and the upzoning that gets happening, that's being requested all over. And what kind of value are we actually talking about that is transferred to those current property owners that were treated as speculators in some years ago? Yeah, just think folks. Well, that works. But it's the
Full disclosure, my properties in the Upzoning area, the most tranquil. Some beneficiary of Upzoning will be potentially, but I'm not for it, okay? This is the largest transfer of wealth ever in the state of California, this whole Upzoning, the entire state. Let's face it, there's no value recapture from people who managed to try. When we did, as President Peskin said, Central Soma, Eastern Soma, Western Soma, Eastern neighborhoods, all the eastern parts of the city that were the last hot thing that we had to develop, because on the west side, we actually went back and said, we need to recapture some of this value that we're giving developers, people that own property, when they develop, to the tune that we recover 67 cents on the dollar.
That's true.
That's what the goal was. We passed the Central Soma plan, I was in the planning commission then. That's we actually, the target was, and the developers signed up for it. So you're seeing some of the things that are happening. The monster of the mission was a result of an upzoning payment that one of the developers made, because we actually went back to get that. But none of that is in any of this. So everybody's going to make a lot of money. But nobody's going to stop that. The other people are going to pay for the impact of it, whether it's going to be lifestyle, new parking, all these different things, or on the SFPUC needs to put new infrastructure in, the ratepayers pay, right? Look at your PG&E bill. Mine's gone up quite a bit. I don't know about you. We're going to pay for it, not the people that are benefiting from it.
Is the property available in value?
Don't know. I think we have to see what the rezoning is, and then we have to see what property, whether people are advertising, hey, this property's now upzoned for 14 stories, here's what it was before, and estimated value what you get, here's an after. That's a big job, but I think it's in the trillions, let's face it.
I'll give a quick example. I want to say, if for those of you who visit Farmers Market on Clement, there is a coffee shop, Kumaga, and it's a corner lot. And again, don't forget, we just passed a legislation that authored by Supervisor Joel Engardio, that is to upzone all the corner lots to 6 stories. So Kumaga, so now it's vacated. In fact, it was $3,000 per month. The landlord is asking for $7,000. So then there's no way that they can afford it, so they vacate. Upstairs, so on top of it, apparently it's a residential unit, and they apparently are paying $10,000 every month. Is what I was told, and I was like, who are these people? How are they living at 3rd and Clement and paying $10,000 a month in a very tiny units? Another one is really, again, on Clement, 12th Avenue, it's a clay pot house, double, a corner lot, double the rent. Again, the last day was April 3rd, and I've been trying to help them to stay. And these are the things that even the best I want to do for them, with try to secure Asian Law Caucus and some of the folks for free legal counsel and support with our Office of Small Business. There's something about it when it's profit driven. There's nothing I can do, and I don't know exactly how much they will be making. I don't have the cost, but I do know the cost of our neighborhood. And that is, the cost of some of the business and potentially even legacy business. So those are the costs to our city. Next, please.
That does it. So then,
A little bit easier to say.
I wrote notes mostly because I will go off topic. So my name is Lily. I'm the director of the Sunset Chinese Cultural District and also director of community engagement at Warming School in the Sunset. So it's more of a comment and maybe get like useful for supervisors. So for tonight, like I look around at the middle of trying to make just local competency at a big vicinity. There's easily over 100 people in this room, and PI folks make up about 50% of the Sunset. And I would have loved to see a lot more engagement, a lot more outreach to our communities. I was looking for you to get an email. And, you know, I want to have this side like Sunset Forward, which was a community needs assessment that we participated in, found that affordable housing was the top issue facing on Sunset. And this was a survey at community needs assessment that was done to over 2,000 people throughout the pandemic before, after, and passing slowly as working. And I want to also emphasize, I think we're culturally one. A lot of the things that I heard tonight are very similar to what I've been hearing from the Chinese community and how we've been working, especially with the cultural district that Renee has been doing community on. So when we're talking about multi-generational households, that's what, you know, we have too. A lot of our Chinese families were pushed out of, or like not pushed out, was redlined in Chinatown. I was able to support housing in the Richmond district. We're trying to support families here. All of the families are looking for ADUs. We can't build an ADU. We don't have money to build an ADU, right? So overall comment is like, let's figure out how to work with the Chinese folks. Let's engage the Chinese community in our language, in a presentation that makes sense, because I think you had said that the presentation was super wonky. It's super wonky in English, and Patrick explaining that to like the Chinese elder, right? And then a plug for our cultural district. We are working on our chess report, our cultural heritage history, cultural heritage housing, and I'm missing it. Economic sustainability strategy. And with those, for Sunset in particular, we do talk about ADUs, we do talk about cultural competency and bringing Chinese folks into forums like this. So really, it's like to our supervisors, watch out for it, please vote for it, all that good stuff.
Lily, before you walk away, comment, please. Is there somebody else on the panel who wants to make a comment about this as well, or just? I just want to say, as a community and as all of the group and our host, we are working on more outreach. We tried to do the translation tonight. We're looking for feedback on that. We're looking at doing another larger community outreach, which does involve English recording. So just keep pulling up the emails. Great. Thanks for coming.
The question is for President Peskin. Earlier this week at the Capital Planning Committee, there was a discussion between the Planning Department and the SFPUC. And the Planning Department was saying, there's going to be a lot of upzoning on the west side. What about the water? And the PUC was saying, it's going to be recycled water. That's how we're going to do it. Just to know that the recycled water facility has already buzzed through $200 million and it's still not done. So the question is, who's going to pay for all these massively expensive infrastructure projects that will be needed to upzone the west side?
Ms. Bogan, you are asking a profoundly important question relative not only to water, but all sorts of other ancillary investments in infrastructure that the municipality has to make to accommodate transportation improvements. We're talking about if you have increased masses of humans clustered in part of town, you've got to figure out how to operate more muni buses or other forms of transportation. You have water and wastewater issues that you have to deal with. You have electrical load issues that you have to deal with. The simple answer to your question, Ms. Bogan, is if you look at the capital plan of the San Francisco Public Utilities, the 7th largest municipal utility in the United States of America, which is your water provider, not only for San Francisco, but for cities from Hayward all the way around the peninsula, 2.3 million wholesale customers and another 800,000 customers here. The answer is the ratepayers will pay for that. And if you look at the capital plan, which was in that report that was before the capital planning committee, you see between now and 2040 sewer and water rates combined going up exponentially to hundreds. I think the average, I'm making this up, but I believe the chart said $430 a month at the end of this capital plan cycle. So that's the inevitable. I mean, that's how you pay for infrastructure, is you float revenue bonds, and revenue bonds are paid back through ratepayer funds. So that's the answer, and that's how you fund it. Just saying.
Next, please.
Hi, my name is Kurt Sanders from that Richmond. Since we have you here, Supervisor Peskin, I wish you could tell us briefly about the whole Northeast Bayfront fraud case, about the zoning on highways, the block, Telegraph, L, and other thing. It sounds like you guys, want big time versus the mayor. So I wish you could reach that all it is now. I want it.
So let me start by saying that the state mandated that our housing element had to include how we were going to accommodate 82,000 units between now and 2031, and 46,000 of them affordable, the balance about 36,000 market rate. And that led to a series of land use changes that the board has approved, and has led to the upzoning plans that you saw that are evolving. But it did not contemplate what I was very interested in, which was how do we adaptively reuse vacant downtown office buildings and use them as housing opportunities, which I thought was a good idea. So I teamed up with the mayor. It turned out I had a version of this, the mayor had a version of this, and I thought rather than looking like two competitive credit-seeking politicians, that the two of us should combine our legislation and work maturely together, and that is what we did. In her legislation was a provision, which I was aware of, that said in an area that, so the downtown, there are different zoning designations. Downtown is zoned, as Mr. Richards and Mr. Antinori, another former planning commissioner, knows, is zone C-3, commercial-3. There is also another area that encompasses the northeast waterfront from Fisherman's Wharf at the base of Van Ness, sweeps all the way around to the high-rises downtown. That is the C2. And in the legislation, there was a provision that said that we would remove the density limits in the C2 district. I thought that was okay. If you want to put 20 units in the box instead of 10 units in the box, I thought that was okay. It turned out that when combined with form-based density and double density bonus, you could squeeze all of that height up in a 65-foot district to 270 feet, creating these unaffordable luxury high-rises. Once we figured that out, because 3 of them were applied for, I said, I think I did not realize the consequences of what we voted on. Legislation is a dynamic thing. We need to fix this. So I sat down with the professional planners who said, yeah, we need to fix this. This is not good. And I introduced legislation that I did in conjunction with the planning department. It went to the planning commission. The planning commission voted unanimously. The mayor's 4 appointed commissioner, the board's 3 appointed commissioners voted unanimously to recommend it to the Board of Supervisors. It got to the Board of Supervisors. The Yimbys thought that this was going to be the end of the world, that was a downzoning. This was not a downzoning. This was a mistake that we made a few months ago that we needed to fix. It was an unintended consequence. And everything you have read has been the magnification and polarization of what was us trying to fix basically an inadvertent mistake that had outsized consequences with supersized high-rises on our waterfront, on the northeast waterfront. 8 of us agreed to that. The mayor, 8 out of 11. The mayor then vetoed that legislation and thought that one of us would change our minds. God bless my colleagues on the Board of Supervisors. Supervisor Chen co-sponsored that legislation. She stayed firm. All 8 of us stayed firm, and we overrode the mayor's veto. And in large part, thanks to the Neighborhoods United, who sent us, we got thousands and thousands of emails. It's the first time that neighborhoods actually matched or exceeded the amount of emails that we got from the units.
With the next question, it does matter, and each and every one of you guys matter. You don't think it does, but it does. I know sometimes it seems like we're fighting that as a battle for everything for our neighborhoods, but you all matter. Just keep holding strong. Sorry, I had to get on my soapbox there a little bit.
I'm a 50-year president of C-Sport district, and I'm an affordable housing activist here on the west side. I was wondering, how did our supervisor vote on your legislation on Mr. Peskin? How did Engardio vote on that? And but I have a couple of other questions, so I want to hear that. And I also would like to know, if you know the answer, and it would be good to share it. Was there affordability or anything in any of Engardio's corner 6-story legislation? Was there any affordability in that? And when Engardio voted against your resolution, the wonderful resolution that stopped here, I mean, didn't stop him, it was just a resolution, we need to watch this, to take back the post from the Coastal Commission. Maybe you talked about this tonight on the sign house, but you don't answer that. But I'm very outraged that Engardio wants to have the city control the code, and why we can work that step development. And so he's not here tonight, and he's not answered those questions tonight. So she was saying, could you be able to speak on that? And maybe Supervisor can and well. Thank you.
So let me just say that I enjoy working with Supervisor Engardio. We treat each other with dignity and respect. We don't always vote the same way. He did not join me in that vote on the C2 or the resolution relative to Senate Bill 951. But I think he comes from a place of principle, and we have actually seen eye to eye around some of the legislation that we have passed about fourplex, around corner blocks. To answer your other question, the inclusionary housing laws, which mandate a percentage of on-site affordable housing, only apply to projects that are 10 units or more. So the inclusionary housing laws would apply if there were that kind of a unit count, but I think these are smaller scale, and therefore on-site affordable housing would not be in that kind of building typology.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who has a question? Don't be shy. Let up the bite. You said after all. Go ahead, Ken.
I have a question. Why did the leadership way back when welcome the tech folks with open arms? Again, no one thought ahead about the crisis. They have a great deal of responsibility for creating upgrade right now. This keeps me up at night. What were they thinking? It doesn't take financial genius. to know that inviting tech workers, what Mayor Lee was that using, and what was the leadership thinking when you were around here, that could you speak to this? You know, trying to figure this out. It's all on us, still on our backs. So that's my question, why? Where's our leadership, and why did they do this to us?
That is true. There is a movie called Company Town I would urge you to watch Company Town. It's actually a good independent film, and I learned a lot from that film. Actually, that really was one of the films that I learned about how the industry, Company Town, as a concept that it was impacting San Francisco. Because you would think about Company Town as somewhere in the Midwest, and like when you do mining, or in Asia somewhere. But the reality is that that was what was happening to San Francisco with the tech industry. And I think that was also what Supervisor Peskin had talked about earlier, thinking about what downtown was like then, you know, banking, financial industry, insurance, and real estate. But eventually that really was taken over by tech. And today what a lot of people are asking and thinking about the downfall about downtown, like what is happening to it, is really fundamentally when we just heavily rely on one industry for our ups and for our downs. That is what's happening right now. When they decided unilaterally, one industry saying we're going to work remote and no longer coming to our downtown, that is what's happening. And that's why I think that it was and I think that is really the challenge that at least I see and working in city government in the last 20 years, is that far more too often that we see some elected headline chasing, press, you know, media chasing the next shining thing, and that they always believe this one thing that will problem solve everything. And that in this case, at that moment, we believe the tech industry is going to save all of us and in our economy. And I think that is really that mentality. And you're going to continue to see that. And except this one is with faster cycle. At one point they tell you a soccer stadium would save us. At one point they tell you to bring university downtown will save us. And then at one point, just kind of throwing spaghetti on the wall, see what sticks. All these will save us. And they also said AI will save us, artificial intelligence will save us now. So time and time again, I think the question for all of us is that when we support our elected leaders and when we question them, we need to ask ourselves too, are we going to buy into that just one solution will fix everything? Because they're going to continue to sell it to us if we continue to buy it. It's great.
So I've done a lot of research on affordable housing in the city. I pulled together a meeting about 2 months ago with Senator Weeder and some other people. Part of what I learned in my research was in 1950, San Francisco had 775,000 people. Today it's right around 808. So in 75 years, the population only grew by 33,000 people. Now it did grow higher before we had our drop-off, but the city doesn't grow that fast, and it really only grew in those last 20 years by about 5,000 a year. During that time, we were still building thousands of units of housing. Right now, the housing units here are over 400,000 units. Back in 1950, it was like 200 and some. So we've doubled the housing units. We have only 33,000 currently more people. And I can't understand why the state is shoving this down our throat, trying to make us do things that are counterintuitive and don't work in our benefit. And I see all these young people coming to meetings and they hear that, oh, we're going to make a housing affordable. And these young tech workers and young people are thinking, oh, great, I'll finally get a $400,000 condo or something and get into the market. They're not building any of that stuff. And the stuff that they are building, all of it in the city is pretty much $1.2 million or more, and we're financing that. And when you're financing that over 30 years at 7%, that's a $2.4 million house. That's more than probably almost everybody in this room houses worth. So why are we creating all this debt that you and I are going to have to pay for? Our water bills are going to go up because they don't have the infrastructure. Like, it should be done in a thought-out methodical way, like here's how we hit the goal, here's how we actually do create affordable housing. Because downtown there's a place called Cubics. They sell units for $375,000 a unit. There's studios. I lived in a studio for 15 years of my life, and it was perfectly good for me because it allowed me to save money to eventually 20 years ago buy a place and get into it. But it's like, instead of building truly affordable housing, if that housing was built and it's being sold today, market rate, $375, why aren't we building more of that kind of housing for people? That's not what they're building. What they're doing is they're building affordable housing, and it's a lot of it. Whoever the people are who get those units, they get to live there the rest of their life. 30% of whatever they make, they get to get into the housing units. No, that is true, because I've talked to TNDC and others. They meet qualifications, but once they get in, they don't get kicked out.
I know everything was, she has to qualify every single year.
Well, if you look at what the requirements are.
We're not going to debate, we're not going to get argument, guys.
I want to say one thing is where I lost my train of thought. In 2023, population of San Francisco was 828,000. We lost roughly 65,000 people since the capital exodus. The demographers project that the population by 2060 is going to be 845,000. You do the math. 82,000 units with a population increase of only roughly 20,000 people doesn't make any sense to me. Demographers need to catch up to Scott Weaver and say, look, this is pie in the sky crap that you're keep trying to shove out in front of us.
Do you hear me? Yeah. The answer to the question that was raised is that the plan is to displace the people. It's another form of redevelopment plan. That's what it is. The plan is to get rid of most of the people in San Francisco on the west side and some parts of the northeast in order to upgrade it and make a hell of a lot more money and change the population. There was a time when then Mayor Newsom said, one of the things we have to do in San Francisco is change the demographics of San Francisco. And if you look at the demographics, it has changed. And I think there's a purpose to it. So the real purpose is to actually replace a whole lot of people, especially a lot of people like us. You guys.
Thank you. We have time for just one more question. So I think brief, please. Everybody wants to go home, I'm sure. That's all right.
I've been studying this, and I know the reading numbers were numbers that were just pulled out of the hat. It's totally ridiculous, and in my mind, it's for Supervisor Peskin. Would you consider suing the state either as a supervisor or a future mayor? And if they're going to give us numbers, they have to be based on reason and logic, not, it's like you're going, if I said I want to lose 100 pounds in a week, it just isn't reasonable and logical. I'm not going to ever pick
So you're right about the RENA numbers. They are not based in any exacting science or survey. And as a matter of fact, interestingly enough, when the RENA numbers were coming down, Mayor Brooke was actually very active in opposing them because we were all legitimately worried that we were being set up to fail. And it's not just the builder's remedy. The builder's remedy may be their ultimate goal. But it also comes with a lot of draconian impacts to local governments, including withholding affordable housing money that we get from the state, which I always liken to, it's like a kid who kills their parents and then asks the judge for mercy because they're an orphan. I did actually author a letter. I was joined by Supervisor Chan in asking our independently elected city attorney to consider litigation against the Department of Housing and Community Development about the imposition of non-scientifically crafted, unrealistic housing numbers. He has chosen thus far not to pursue that kind of litigation. And by the way, I don't think that is necessarily entirely informed by politics or pressure from the YIMBYs. I also think it has to do with the amount of time that has lapsed since the RENA numbers went into effect, and the period to challenge that was probably much earlier than now. But also, you know, our city attorney was very active in the state legislature in the service of the YIMBY movement. So.
Okay, if there's no other questions, I'd like to ask Lori, is it possible for you to flash that email address up on the thing while I'm just going to get updates here? So if you have questions or comments to address to Supervisor Peskin and Supervisor Chan or the panel, then you can contact them and she'd be happy to forward it on to them. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight and giving them your time. We'll be in discussions about doing, hopefully, many more of these, and like we said, we're on a road trip. We're going from district to district. So, for your time. Thank you. And if anybody like chairman to sign over here to help us kind of just put it in one place, we really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Good evening.